F1 has returned and we have the second sprint race weekend of the season. We were at Miami, the place that Lando Norris secured his first victory of his career. So maybe arriving here is exactly what he needs. My name is Luther from GPFans and I'm here to preview the Miami sprint weekend. So there's no better place to start other than the title battle between Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Oscar Piastri holds a 10-point advantage to Lando Norris, and Max Verstappen's just 2 points behind Lando Norris. So them three are very tight at the top. George Russell not too far behind them. A bit of a distance fourth place, with Charles Leclerc edging closer after the Ferrari's first podium of the season. The sprint weekend is an interesting one because it allows for a massive swing in points because it's the most points that are available over a race weekend ever. If you win both the sprint race and the Grand Prix, you have such a large advantage over those people behind you. If you add on the fact that we used to get points for fastest lap as well, it used to be even better for the winners if you had a strong weekend. When Max Verstappen was winning every single weekend and winning sprint races and then winning the Grand Prix, that's also what helped him eke out these massive championship leads. So we go here knowing that any of the top three could leave this weekend being the top of the standings. And that adds a bit of pressure to it. And there's someone in that group recently that's kind of been struggling with the pressure. Oscar Piastri is not that person, but Oscar Piastri is the man in form. He's the only multiple race winner this season. He's won 3 races this season from the 5. Obviously, Lando Norris and Max Verstappen both have 1 each. Oscar Piastri has 2 poles. Max Verstappen has 2 poles. Lando Norris has the single other pole. We are waiting to see if anybody else from that group behind them can catch up and can put themselves in a position to get a pole. George Russell or Charles Leclerc. They seem to be the ones, if any, to be able to do that. So it'll be interesting to see if they can impose themselves in that group. But it'll be very hard because I'll get to it later. But Ferrari have been struggling for pace. Mercedes seem to have a bit more pace than them. On average, Ferrari's the 4th fastest car, Mercedes the 3rd fastest car, and the Red Bull under Max Verstappen's hands, I must emphasize that bit, on average is the 2nd fastest car. So it'll be very difficult for them to impose themselves. We've seen Max Verstappen recently say that 3/10 is something that takes a very long time to build up. And these guys are all talking about being 3/10 away from the McLaren. So we'd expect McLaren once again to be strong in Miami and to leave this track, probably with increasing their lead in the Constructors' Championship and potentially Oscar Piastri increasing his lead in the Drivers' Championship. I mean, with that 10-point advantage, he just needs to finish 2nd. And if Lando Norris does win, he'll still be leading the championship because that would be a 7-point swing. So if Oscar Piastri finishes 3rd and Lando Norris finishes 1st, that would be the 10-point swing. But Oscar Piastri would still be ahead in the championship simply because he's won 3 races. And at that point, Lando Norris would have won 2. So he has to finish out of the podium in order to be overtaken by Lando Norris. Whether or not Lando Norris can do that is another thing that has to be asked, simply because Lando Norris has been struggling of late. He had a very good recovery drive in Saudi after his mistake in qualifying. Wasn't the cleanest weekend for him. And obviously he talked about his kind of mistakes in Bahrain qualifying. It's not been very clean for Lando Norris recently. But if there was anything that would be beneficial for him, it would be returning to the place that he got his first victory in. Obviously, there was a lot of things that helped him get that victory. The safety car, Max Verstappen damaging the bottom of his car, the underbody of his car. There's several things that actually did lead to Lando Norris. But once he got in front, I mean, there was no one that could catch up with him and he won very comfortably. So if he can get that feeling back that he had returning to the place that he achieved a lifelong dream, I'm sure that can definitely be something that does help him get back on track. And I'm rooting for Lando to get a good weekend because I feel like he needs it. Him and Oscar Piastri are polar opposites. Oscar Piastri is just so cool-headed. Like Max Verstappen said at Saudi, he barely makes mistakes. He's just so cool, calm and collected. Whereas Lando Norris wears his heart on his sleeve. Every small thing seems to be something that affects him, maybe positively, maybe negatively. So if he gets a good qualifying, that can then boost him. If he then doesn't make a mistake, that will then boost him until he then makes that next mistake. And that will, unfortunately, because of just who he is as a human being, and he's just a very emotional human being, clearly, it will then affect him and he'll go back down, which is obviously going to be very tough to sustain over the course of a championship season, because say your opponent wins multiple races in a row. I mean, well, that's going to have a negative impact on your thoughts process, even if you do everything that you can. But I think he will bounce back. Whether or not that's a win, that's another kind of debate to have. I don't know if it's a win, but I do expect him to have his first clean full weekend in a long time, just simply because of it being Miami and him having that feeling of returning back to where he did stand on the top step of that podium in an F1 race for the first time. For Max Verstappen, I don't know how long he can drag the car to where he's dragging it. Obviously, I do think it's unfortunate for Yuki Tsunoda in Saudi. He crashed. It wasn't really, we didn't necessarily get to see how fast Yuki was. I do think he probably could have got good points if it wasn't for that crash with Gasly, but it was a racing incident. Neither of them was actually at fault for it, I believe. And we hope to see him bounce back and see just how quick that Red Bull actually is, because I understand it's a tough car, so it does take getting used to. So seeing Yuki after several races inch closer and closer and closer to the front pack is something I want to see, because that is when we will actually understand what Max Verstappen is working with. Because right now, Yuki's kind of in his preseason kind of this weekend, this kind of space of 2 weeks was Yuki's preseason, because he got put in the Red Bull and then had a triple header. He had 3 straight races. You don't have much time to adjust, to get used to, because, okay, I need to prepare for Japan. Okay, I need to prepare for Bahrain. Okay, I need to prepare for Jeddah. There was no, okay, let me get used to this car. Let me know how I can set up this car, this, that, the other, in order to help me. Yuki Tsunoda has now had that. So I'm very curious now to see how he does in Miami. And in seeing him get that experience, it will then help us see just how bad the Red Bull is and just how much Max Verstappen is outperforming the car that he's been given. And we can really see, it's funny. What I think that would actually show is like how, whilst they are winning and whilst they are first and second in the driver standings, are the McLaren drivers underperforming by not blowing Max Verstappen out of the water so far? That would be my curiosity. Even though it is clearly a very close pack all over the grid, I still think they do have quite an advantage, and I would expect them to have more of an advantage than they have been over Max Verstappen, who I acknowledge, and I think everybody acknowledges, is still the best all-round driver on the grid. But those are the people at the front and Yuki Tsunoda. But what about the people a bit further behind? And by those, I mean Ferrari, because Ferrari so far they entered the season expecting to be competing right from the get-go. They're not. That's one of their issues. There's 2 main issues with Ferrari. It is the performance of the car and the underperformance of Lewis Hamilton so far, because whilst we all acknowledge that Lewis Hamilton is still adjusting to the car, if it isn't something that changes, this is a narrative that's going to continue to grow, continue to build, and it's going to be something that every single weekend, Fred Vasseur, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc are all asked about. And they don't get, I'm not saying that will affect how they develop the car, etc., but it's something that it's another narrative that Ferrari don't necessarily need to have on them right now, because they need to get back to where they were. They need to get back to how they finished and how they flipped around their season last season and managed to pushed McLaren, who had the best car for the majority of the season, to a title showdown in the last race of the season. Last season, in the summer break, I said that Lewis Hamilton needed Ferrari, when he was still at Mercedes, to show him that they could develop a car over the course of the season, because Ferrari hadn't been doing that for the past, decade plus. And they did that last season. They managed to get rid of the things that they were worried about. They won at Monza. They performed well at other places. And they said, now we need to see if our car does good in more typical tracks, because Monza and other races where they were performing are very specific tracks. And then they went to Kota and Leclerc won. And then they went to Mexico and Sainz won. So they really did show that at the end of the season, they had developed a car that could work wherever. This season, once again, Ferrari need to be able to do that. Because right now, on raw pace, they are about 3/10 behind the McLaren. And 3/10 is a massive amount of time to make up. And the only way you're really going to be able to make up 3/10 is if you bring an upgrade and it just performs better than you ever imagined it. Because I promise you now, there is not a single F1 team that brings an upgrade to a weekend. Maybe if you bring numerous, no, even not even numerous upgrades on one weekend, you're not going to come to a weekend and be like, this is going to increase our pace by 3/10. That's something that you develop over the course of a race. Ferrari do have upgrades coming, but I still do think they're a bit away. I do assume and think from reports that I've seen that the estimated time for the upgrades is going to be their first home Grand Prix at Emilia-Romagna. And what a place to actually bring the upgrades in front of the Tifosi in Italy. That would be the perfect place to maybe, I don't know, just edge a bit closer to the McLaren. I do think Charles Leclerc did show pace in Saudi, that if Ferrari I don't go for like a bit of an alternate strategy, they do have the pace to win races. I think in Bahrain, Charles Leclerc was so quick with that offset strategy. He got past Norris. He was charging down on George Russell. If that safety car wasn't so poorly timed, Leclerc on newer tyres, softer tyres at the end of the race, he was already charging down Piastri. He definitely could have charged down Piastri and battled for the win at least. And I also think in Saudi, whilst he probably didn't have the pace to battle with Piastri, he showed that at times he had the pace to be the quickest driver on the grid if he had an offset of tyres. So what Ferrari have to then realize what they need to do is, if you don't have the raw pace to beat them on the same tyre compound, with the same tyre delta, you need to win races through strategy. Offset your tyres. Make sure you're on fresher tyres than the other drivers, and use those strategy to bring Leclerc and hopefully Hamilton eventually into the kind of battles for the victory. But whilst Ferrari look for performance on track, I think they also need to look for a special livery that's a lot better than the one that they have for the Miami Grand Prix, because the HP-inspired sponsorship livery that they've brought is just, once again, another Ferrari special livery that I am just not a fan of. I wasn't a fan of last year's Miami Grand Prix special livery. I loved the maiden Las Vegas Grand Prix special livery. That was absolutely beautiful. The Monza yellow ones were okay. I was hoping for a Monza black one last year, but I understand the idea of Ferrari needing to keep the red on their car. They're Ferrari. Red is Ferrari. I understand that is the brand. But I just feel like Ferrari could do something so much better with the liveries if they just decided for one race, just let it go. The Mugello was all right. I felt like it was a bit dark. It probably looked a lot better in person than on track on TV, sorry. I felt like it looked way too dark to the point where it almost looked brown. The 1000th Grand Prix special livery, that is. And yeah, I just feel like I haven't loved a Ferrari special livery since the Las Vegas Grand Prix one, where you've got McLaren and Red Bull just dishing out special liveries for days that are so cold. But these ones this weekend, the Racing Bulls one, the pink special livery, is beautiful. That's how you do a special livery. I understand that Ferrari are a lot more constrained to their livery than the other teams, but that Racing Bulls one is sick. Kick Sauber is sick. Their special livery for the Miami Grand Prix is so cool. That Nickelodeon theme of slime all over their car. And I normally don't like the bogey car that I call it, that is the Kick Sauber, but this weekend, the way they've done it, it just looks cool and I love it. But unfortunately, Ferrari have missed another opportunity and in fact actually used it to please the suits instead of please the fans, which is heartbreaking. But it's a sprint weekend. We've got action all weekend, starting with practice and the qualifying on Friday. I cannot wait. I love a sprint weekend. I always feel like Charles Leclerc does very well in them. I said this last time and I do believe he didn't do the best, but he had a broken front wing, so he didn't get a chance to do the best. I'm going to put that out there right now. So hopefully we have some good racing. I will be joined by Nicholas again on Tuesday to bring you guys a reaction to that. Hopefully you guys enjoy the Miami Grand Prix and I'll see you then. Peace.